And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Expedition to Newdale. This is an advanced level game in 8 chapters, it's called, from Alexander Pfister. Now, this game was touted as the board game version of Oh My Goods. I don't know if it tells you that on the box itself. Yeah, it does. It says the Oh My Goods saga continues as a board game. Now, Oh My Goods is a card game. If you actually go back and watch my original review, I wasn't that impressed with it, but Mr. Pfister changed a few rules in the game, and I don't often go back and replay a game, but I did in this case, and it made it a really great little card game. So I was very anxious to see how it became as a board game. I was a little bit less interested in this whole 8 chapter, where I don't know that I'm a big... I don't get that excited that Euro games now have a campaign you play through. I just want to play a really cool game. You change things up in the game, I'm great with that, but to play through in order, I don't know. I mean, the Expedition to Newdale with ice giants and all sorts of things sounds cool, but I didn't know how strong that would be. Well, let's take a look. For each scenario, you're going to have a set of event cards, and at the beginning of a round, you'll turn over the top event card. There might be a special thing that happens right away, like this says put 6 of those buildings, those cards I just showed you, face up, and when you build, you can build a card from there rather than your hand of cards that you have. But it also shows you a certain number of people here. There's 2 yellows, 2 greens, 1 red, and no blue. You put this down, and now players are going to decide where to put their workers based on this information. See, these are the amount of people that you're going to be able to work with. Think of them almost as a resource. They're called assistants, and after players place their workers, you're going to reach into a bag and you're going to pull out 4 more of them randomly. And then they're placed here. So in this case, there's 4 yellows, 4 greens, 1 red, and no blues. And there's fewer blues in the bag than anything else, so you can kind of gamble on what might be pulled from the bag. You know there's that much, but more might come out. So before that happens, players are going to take turns placing their workers on the resource cards to produce things on their buildings that they have around the board, or you can place them on these 5 actions up here. When placing workers on a building, you're going to decide you can only place it in one of the spots. You can't put 2 on the same building. So you have to decide where you would like to put it. So for example, if I put it here, for example, my worker, I'm saying I'm going to get 2 more than is needed. So you see, to produce coal here, I need 2 yellows and 1 red. Now you remember that that event card that I drew already has 2 yellows and a red on it. That's a guaranteed, but I put in a +2. I said I'm going to get 2 more than needed. So in this case, I did. You remember I drew 2 more yellows, so I'm fine. And if I'm fine, I'm going to add 4 resources here to the pile. So if you place it on these -1s, I'm saying I only need 1 and 1 to do it, but I'm going to get fewer resources. This is producing it sloppily, and this is doing an extraordinary job. The thing is, if you fail here, you get nothing. Well, you can discard 3 cards from your hand, which is expensive, for each missing assistant. So if I was missing 2, for example, I could pay 6 cards, but that's pretty expensive. So maybe I go here, and then if I had gone here, for example, I said I need 1 less. 2 greens and 2 blues. But if you remember, there was no blues in the card. I didn't draw any more, and I needed 2 of them. I would get nothing here. And then this is the amount of cubes you would get on that card based on where you place these. So that's how production works with workers. Up here, the different spaces are pretty easy. Here you can pay 7 to get a 3rd worker. Here you can pay 13 coins. Again, remember, you spend goods that are worth this amount to get a 4th worker, which also gives you 3 victory points. There's a victory point track here where players will be keeping track of their victory point. As you pass different spots on the board, you also get to draw more cards from the deck. If you go here, you can discard 2 cards to get 4 coal and 1 resource of your choice on any of the buildings you have. Here, you can keep 1 card, discard the rest and replace them, and then draw 3 more cards. Here, you can spend 4 goods to take one of these tiles off your board. I'll talk about that in a second. And then here, you can build a building. Each building from your hand has a certain cost on it, and it's worth a certain amount of victory points. and it will produce resources. You'll also notice that there's a kind of good on the card itself. Like this, for example, shows a wood. When you're producing goods, you can discard cards from your hand to get bonus goods. And if you do that at all, you're also going to get an extra one for doing that. So, for example, this needs 2 yellows and 2 greens to produce at the sawmill. So if I was producing there, I could also discard from my hand to put another cube on here. And if you do any bonus activity like that, there's different ways to do it. I could, like on this one, for example, I can take resources from the sawmill and use them in the cooper's workshop. Just move them straight over. It'll go from 2 to 3. If you do any sort of bonus resources, you get 1 extra one. So if you play your cards right, you might be able to really produce a lot at one of these. And you can see the cooper's workshop, the goods there are worth 3 each. Whenever you build a new building, you also are going to place it on the board. You can move up to 2 away following the roads. If you move only 1 away, though, then you can take one of these bonus tiles, which is a one-time use. Like, for example, this one lets me draw 1 card for each yellow assistant that was out there that time. And so each of the cards has various bonuses. This one gives you a resource of your choice. This lets you use 1 less assistant when working with a building. But also having these buildings out there will likely work towards your secret objective. At the end of the game, I get 2 points for each of my houses that's in a diamond spot, and 2 that's each at one of these spots here with these weird looking monuments. Finally, having a house at certain locations that shows different landscape types. If I'm here, I will get a discount when building buildings of that type. So this would normally cost 8, but it's -3 if I have a house in water, which I do, so now it would only cost 5. Remember I told you about that space that lets you take these tiles off the board? If you take off this tile here, and you can now build your houses 2 spaces away and take a bonus tile, or 3 spaces away and not take a bonus tile. And here, if I take this tile away, I can discard 2 cards from my hand for each missing assistant rather than 3. That's a basic bare bones of how the game works. Players are going to be placing their things, taking the actions. At the end of a round, you will be able to draw 2 cards or build a building, so you can always build one. You don't have to go to this action spot. That just lets you build an extra building. And then you go to the next round. When all the rounds are finished, you will have scored points throughout the game. You'll get points from the buildings that you've built, points from your secret objective, and whoever has the most points is the winner. You can then go to the next game in the campaign if you want to, or you can just play these as single games. There's a lot of pieces in this game. You have to put little stickers on the discs here to show what workers they are. And there's a lot of pieces that actually you're not going to use. Like, for example, I have these extra pieces here, and you got some of these assistants that are going to be used later on in the game. And the game has different numbered cards that come with it. These are different number buildings, like this tannery, for example, is 203. And the scenarios will tell you when these buildings come into play, but you're going to have to keep all this stuff separate. You even have another side to your player board here that shows a boat. So the extra scenarios are cool, and it's cool that all this stuff is there, but keep in mind that it does make sorting the game out a little more difficult because there is that much stuff that's included with the game for the 8 different scenarios. There's also a chronicle booklet here besides the rule book that kind of talks about each of these, and some of the chapters will have various branches depending on what's happened before. And there's also a story involved here, which is it's there. I don't know that the story is gripping or anything. Story-wise, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of a story there, but this game feels and looks like every other one of these games, whether it's from Alexander Pfister or from Uwe Rosenberg. Lookout games all have that very same look to them. So that's fine. Although I have to say, I was not as disappointed with the story. I did not play through all 8. I played through several. And then I went and read and looked at the rule changes. And it's interesting. They go through. Like I said, the only kind of a pain is, okay, you need cards 203 to 206. A little bit of sorting between each one. There's also a solo thing where you can go through and play and try to beat a certain score. And they have solo objectives for each of the 8 chapters also. The 8 chapters, the different boards, I do like that. I wish it was a little easier. I know you can do it, but just to say, I'm playing chapter 4. and forgetting everything else. I mean, you can do that. I just wish that that they weren't connected. You just picked one and played it. But again, you can do that. I just wish it was almost presented that way rather than play them in order for the story. But I digress. The game itself. I said that this was kind of touted as Oh My Goods, the board game, and oh my word, oh my goods, the card game, the board game. This certainly is. It is, if you know how to play the card game, there's a lot of similarities here. There's that whole push your luck aspect. I think it's actually done cleaner in the board game. I think I like the board game better than the card game, with the exception of the fact that the card game is very portable and easy to play and easy to set up. This one is not, compared to the card game. But I do love the concept here. This whole, I'm building these buildings, and then I'm like, oh, I see I'm missing 3 of the assistants, but maybe they'll be pulled from the bag. And if not, do I have enough cards to cover from them? Then I want to build this building. And where have I moved on the board? Getting these bonus tiles, when's the best time to use them? It's not a complex game. When you're placing your workers, all 2 of them, eventually you'll get 3 and 4, maybe faster than not. Almost everybody can get the 3rd worker on turn 1 if you really want to. But as you go around and get these different things, you have 5 places to put workers on the board and then a few buildings to produce. It's not much, but you're just deciding. And again, the card game had cards that did all this. This game uses pieces and such, and I feel like that's an easier, for me, visualization. And I also like, even though I said that the 8 chapters and stuff, I do like the fact that there is different ones, and each game will play differently, and I don't know what event will happen. I like the extra rules that are added. I like how there's different pieces, but it's not an overwhelming amount. It's pretty fun. I think this one actually is not going to get a ton of buzz. I don't know if that's because of the campaign version, because there's a gazillion games out there at any point in time, or because Alexander Pfister has his big games that come out each year get all the love. This is not necessarily a big game, it's more of a medium weight one, but it's one that I found to be very fun. My biggest complaint, a lot of work sorting stuff out and putting it back in a box after each game. But other than that, it's that push your luck aspect where you decide how much to produce from buildings. You're going through the deck. Cards can be used to produce resources. You can try to build these little production chains that just feel very satisfying when you pull them off. The money system is very clean and easy. Just thumbs up for me. A lot of fun. Expedition to Newdale. Dice Tower Judgment approved.